Tonight's story takes you into Tonight's story takes you into one of the most mysterious and quietly beautiful worlds of the past, the night of the Middle Ages. Now, slowly empty your mind, leave behind today's rush, your thoughts, your to-do list. You don't need to do anything anymore. Just listen and let yourself drift into the flow of this story. Because tonight, we are going to a completely different time, to the Middle Ages, where there were no lights, where even silence felt heavy. When the sun slipped behind the crooked rooftops and the narrow, winding streets, a completely different world awakened. A world shaped not by the dense noise of the day, but by shadow, by firelight, and by the soft, uncertain rhythm of people trying to find their way in the dark. This is not a story of kings or great battles. It is the story of ordinary people. A tired watchman, a young woman in love, a hungry thief waiting on a cold rooftop, a child lost to the night. A story told hour by hour, as a small medieval town makes its way through a single unforgettable night. Welcome. Find a comfortable position. Let your shoulders soften. Take a slow, steady breath, and allow the world around you, just for a little while, to grow quiet. Because our story is about to begin. Part 1, The Last Light. The day in the town is almost over. The sun stretches long across the rooftops, painting the crooked chimneys and narrow streets in warm amber and gold. It is the kind of light that can make even the most tired and weathered places look, for just a moment, almost peaceful. But the people of the town are not resting. Not yet. In the marketplace, where only hours ago there was noise and movement, merchants are pulling heavy wooden shutters across their stalls. Hands that spent the day weighing grain and counting coins are now tying knots, clicking locks, tucking small leather pouches beneath loose floorboards or deep into the pockets of worn coats. The smell in the air is changing. During the day, the town smells of bread from the baker's oven, of hay from the stables, of wool and sweat and river water. Now, as the light fades, smoke becomes the main scent. Thin threads rise from chimneys all across the town. One by one, small orange glows appear behind shutters and through the cracks of closed doors. The town is slowly wrapping itself in firelight. In a tall stone tower near the center of town, a bell was waiting. The man responsible for it had climbed these stairs so many times that he no longer needed light to find his way. When the very last edge of the sun touched the distant hills, he pulled the thick rope, and the bell spoke. Not a sharp or startling sound, deep and slow, like a voice made of metal and air, spreading out over the rooftops, settling into the streets, passing through closed shutters and doors. Everyone in the town knew what this sound meant. Day was over. Night was coming. In a small house near the market square, a woman moves quickly, gathering her children inside. She has heard stories all her life about what can happen after dark has fallen. Her mother told them to her. Her grandmother had told them to her mother. Some of the stories warn of real dangers, drunkards and thieves who prefer the night. Others speak of spirits and demons wandering the shadows. She doesn't entirely believe in the spirits, but she crossed herself anyway as she closed the door. The thud it made was satisfying, solid, real. Outside, the narrow streets between the houses tighten further as the daylight fades. The cobblestones are uneven and damp from the day's washing and wastewater. During the day, people step over these things without thinking. At night, when only a few small lamps and the pale light of the moon remain, every puddle and shadow seems to deepen. At the town gate, a group of men are gathering around a small table. These are the night watchmen, not heroes from stories. Most are poorly paid workers, tired-faced, boots worn thin. Some wear old bits of armor, a dented helmet, a leather vest. Others have only thick wool coats wrapped tightly against the coming cold. Every man carries something he can use as a weapon, a wooden staff, a short blade, an iron hook fixed to a long handle. The watch captain, a broad-shouldered man with gray beginning to show at his temples, looks up at the sky. The first stars have appeared. He gives the order, and the town's great wooden gates begin to move. The hinges groan, the chains creak. The last farmers who stayed too late rush inside. A man leading a donkey, a woman pushing a wooden cart heavy with turnips. A boy carrying a bundle of firewood nearly gets left on the wrong side. But a guard grabs him by the shoulder and pulls him through just before the doors close. The bolts slide into place with the sense of finality. For those still outside, the town is now a dark shape in the distance, with only a handful of flickering lights. For those inside, the walls feel both protective and confining. Whatever this night brings will happen here, within these stones. Part 2. The Tavern Wakes. Near the river, on a side street where the cobblestones are older and the houses lean against one another like tired friends, a tavern is preparing for the night. Its wooden sign sways gently in the evening breeze. The name is faded and worn, but everyone in town knows the place by sound and smell long before they see it. Every time the door opens, warm air spills out. Smoke, roasted meat, spilled ale, and something sweeter underneath. Old wood and candle wax. The innkeeper's wife moves between tables, wiping down the rough wooden surfaces with a damp cloth. Her husband tests a fresh barrel of ale with a careful sip, raises an eyebrow slightly, then nods. It will do. As the sky darkens fully, the first customers begin to arrive. 2 young weavers' apprentices push through the door, their hands roughened from a long day of pulling thread. A soldier on leave leans his spear in the corner without a word, and sits down as if every chair in the room has always been waiting for him. 2 merchants who argued over wool prices at the morning market are now sitting almost side by side, each pretending the other isn't there. At first, the noise is soft, a few quiet laughs, the gentle clatter of wooden cups, murmured conversation about the day's work, the harvest, who is going to marry whom. The innkeeper moves among it all like a careful conductor, watching the pace of the drinking, the shifting moods, the balance of the evening. He knows this balance well. If people drink too quickly, the warmth in the room tips fast into something harder. If they drink too slowly, they leave early and he earns nothing. The line is thin, and he has learned to feel it long before anyone else in the room does. In the corner, a minstrel settles onto a low stool and begins tuning his instrument. One string is broken and the wood is old, but when he plays, the sound fills the room with something that feels like memory. He plays a tune everyone knows, and a few people begin to hum along without quite realizing it. For a little while, the night outside feels very far away. Part 3. The Lantern Laws. Darkness falls fully over the town, And with it comes one of the most practical and revealing rules of medieval life, the lantern laws. No one is allowed on the streets after dark without carrying a light. The lantern can be simple, a wooden frame stretched with oiled cloth or thin horn, holding a small candle or oil flame inside. Not bright, but glowing enough for others to see you. And that is the point. In principle, a person walking with a light has nothing to hide. A person walking without one wants to remain unseen. In a world with no street lamps, no police stations, no way to send a message quickly across the town, the lantern laws were a way of trying to preserve a fragile kind of order. They divided the night into two kinds of people, those who carried light and those who hid from it. On one of the town's wider streets, a night watchman pauses at a corner. He holds his lantern high, and its wavering circle of light picks out a woman hurrying home with a cloth bundle tucked under her arm. She looks tired, but she carries her lantern faithfully at her side. They exchange a small nod and she moves on. A moment later, the watchman catches sight of a shape slipping across the far end of the street, moving quickly, carrying nothing, only the brief outline of a dark cloak and fast-moving feet visible before the darkness swallows it again. He quickens his pace, but by the time he reaches the spot, whoever it was has completely vanished. Not everyone who moved without a lantern was a criminal. Some were simply too poor to afford oil. Some had forgotten. Some were servants rushing between one household and another with no time to spare. But most moved in darkness because they didn't want to be recognized. People sneaking toward places they shouldn't be, carrying things they couldn't explain, making small, quiet decisions in the corners of the night. In the upper rooms of a house near the square, a young government official sits hunched over a desk covered in parchment, writing by candlelight. Outside his window, the town has grown quiet except for the distant sounds of the tavern. Sometimes he stops writing and just listens. There is always something out there. Always a quiet murmur of life continuing after the bell. Near the church, a priest walks slowly between the rows of wooden benches, carrying a small lamp that casts the carved faces of saints and angels into long, shifting shadows. For him, night is a time of both danger and faith. He believes deeply that the dark hours are when temptation runs strongest, when drink loosens judgment, when loneliness turns to desperation, when the line between a good man and a bad decision grows very thin. He whispers a prayer, not only for souls, but for bodies too. For the cold families sleeping on straw, for the watchmen on patrol in the streets, for the children still asleep who will wake to another hard day. And somewhere on the dark side of town, a young man checks the small oil lamp in his hand, steps outside, and begins to walk. He is nervous. He has promised to meet someone, a girl from another household, someone his parents would not approve of. The desire to see her has pulled him out into the night despite every warning he has ever heard. His feet know the way even in the dark, and the night, indifferent and watchful, makes no promise to protect him. Part 4. The Heat of the Alehouse. As the first real hours of darkness settle over the town, the tavern becomes the brightest place within the walls. Not bright by any modern measure. The light comes from a handful of oil lamps hung from low wooden beams, their flames burning behind thin sheets of horn that turn the glow soft and amber. No windows open tonight. The warmth trapped inside is dense, smoky, and alive. The room is full now. The carpenters near the hearth are loud, leaning on each other's shoulders, telling stories about the collapsed roof they repaired that morning. One of them is on his third cup and has begun claiming that if given the chance, he could rebuild the entire town on his own. His friends agree enthusiastically, because at this point in the evening, everything sounds true. Near the counter, the two merchants who spent the afternoon pretending not to see each other have given up on that pretense and are now deep in a heated argument about grain prices. Their voices are low, but their eyes are sharp. Neither of them is here simply to drink. Merchants know that the tavern is where information lives. A careless word caught at the right moment can be worth more than a week of trading. The minstrel in the corner has found his rhythm now. He sings about brave lovers and foolish kings, about dragons sleeping beneath mountains, and about the long consequences of drinking too deeply. The crowd beats the tables in uneven time. Someone in the back tries to join in and gets most of the words wrong. His friends find this extremely funny. There is a particular kind of warmth that fills a room like this, not just from the fire or the bodies crowded together, but from something less visible, the letting go of the day. During the hours of work and market and duty, people carry things. Worry and pride and old grudges and the constant quiet pressure of being watched and judged. Here, at least for a few hours, some of that weight lifts. The innkeeper's wife noticed the mood beginning to shift. She feels it the way you feel a change in the weather. Not a specific sign, but a general thickening of the air. Voices are rising. Laughter is sharpening. The soldier in the corner is on his fourth cup and has begun watching the room with a particular alert stillness that comes before trouble. She moves toward the door, just in case. Part 5. The street erupts. When trouble comes, it doesn't announce itself. It rarely does. The butcher's son has been standing outside the tavern for a few minutes, arms crossed, jaw tight, staring at the cobblestones. He had argued inside, something about prices, something about respect, and he had walked out before his temper could make the decision for him. But walking out doesn't always end things in a town this small. Across the street, beneath a lantern fixed to the wall of the cooper's shop, a group of young laborers are gathered. They see him standing there. They say something to each other too quietly to hear, and they laugh. Two more men come out of the tavern behind him, neither in a forgiving mood. The watch captain, patrolling nearby, can see what is about to happen before it does. He signals his men. They take their positions. The lanterns they carry throw dancing shadows across the walls. Four things meet in the middle of the street: pride, ale, anger, and darkness. The rope pulls taut, and then someone says something. One word, short and sharp, and it snaps. The butcher's son steps forward. A fist swings. Someone shoves. The watchmen rush in, pushing and grabbing, trying to separate the bodies. More men spill out of the tavern, drawn by the noise. Some try to calm things down. Others join in without even knowing why. For several minutes, the street is chaos. Shouts, grunts, the thud of fists on cloth and bone, a cup flying through the air and shattering on the stones. Someone loses a shoe. Someone takes an elbow to the face that they will still feel tomorrow. But even inside this, there is a code. No blades, no knives. Everyone in this fight knows everyone else's family. A bruise heals. A killing doesn't. The watch captain works through the tangle of bodies, raising his voice above the noise, not shouting but projecting, the way a man does who has spent 20 years making himself heard in loud places. Slowly, slowly, the chaos subsides. Men step back, breathless. Some are already laughing, turning the fight into a story before the last punch has even been thrown. The captain points. Home. No words needed. One by one, they disperse. The street settles. The lanterns stop swaying, and the thin, fragile piece of the night returns, a little battered, a little breathless, but still holding. For now. Part 6. Those who move in darkness. After curfew, the rules of the night become both stricter and, for some people, entirely beside the point. The curfew bell rings at a set hour, deep and slow, the same voice that ended the working day, now marking the boundary between the permitted and the forbidden. After this sound, anyone still on the streets without good reason risks drawing the attention of the watch. And in a world where the watch is the closest thing the town has to any kind of justice, that attention is not something most people want. Most people go inside, but not everyone. Near the river, two figures crouch beside a barrel hidden beneath a rotting tarp. Their cloaks blend into the surrounding dark. These are not violent men, just men who have found a gap between the town's rules and the town's needs and have quietly turned that gap into a business. The barrel holds herbs, not dangerous ones, not poisons, but herbs that some official somewhere has declared taxable or restricted, or both. The men selling them don't much care about the reason for the restriction. They care that people want them, and that selling after curfew means fewer questions. The curfew bell has just finished its last note. The two men freeze. They wait. Then they begin to move again, rolling the barrel toward a waiting cart with careful, practiced silence. 3 streets away, a young servant girl slips out of a side door with nothing but a sealed letter tucked beneath her cloak. She moves quickly, keeping close to the walls. Delivering private letters after dark is a risk. But those who pay for such deliveries pay well, and some secrets are worth more than any amount of caution. On one of the streets, 3 young men hurry through the dark carrying cloth-wrapped bundles that clink softly with each step. Metal tools, newly made, taken from a workshop where they didn't belong. They plan to sell them to a trader outside the walls at dawn. They are not experienced at this. The youngest of the 3 is trembling, not from cold, but from the kind of fear that arrives only when you're actually doing the thing you told yourself you could do. And in the wealthiest part of town, a man pushes a small cart with a squeaking wheel at every step, carrying a barrel of wine that was never declared to the town council. He delivers it to a fine house, whose owner speaks loudly at public meetings about the importance of law and order. The watch captain knows, approximately, how much of this happens every night. He has never managed to stop it entirely. The night is too large, and the watch is too small. As he carries his lantern through the streets, casting pale light against stone walls and closed shutters, he allows himself one tired thought. The lantern laws keep the careful honest and make the desperate more creative. The night takes care of the rest. Part 7. Secret Meetings. The deepest part of the night belongs in its own way to love. Not the love of songs and poems, though there is some of that too, but the quieter, more careful love that can only survive in the spaces between rules. In a world where marriages are arranged by family agreements, guild alliances, and calculations of status and coin, the heart finds its own way regardless. Near the old town wall, a young woman slips through a side door and out into the street. She hides her lantern beneath her cloak, shielding the flame with both hands. One wrong flicker, and the watch might see her. One wrong word, and the entire street would know by morning. She moves without hurrying. Hurrying draws attention, keeping close to the walls, testing each step before committing her weight. At the end of a lane near an old stone well, someone is waiting for her. He steps forward when he sees her, and the tension on his face softens into something gentler. A poor apprentice, his sleeves worn thin, his hands calloused from work. She is a merchant's daughter, expected to marry someone with better prospects. These facts hold during the day. At night, beside the well, they are only themselves. They stand close and speak in low voices. He asks whether her mother has started to suspect. "A little," she says. He tells her about the week he has been planning. Small plans, quiet dreams, a different kind of future. She listens with her whole face. Perhaps 10 minutes before they must part again. The watch passes once, their lanterns swinging. The two of them press still and silent against the wall of the well. The guards slow. One thinks he heard something. He stops. His companion sighs and says it was probably a cat, and they move on. The lantern light fades. The couple breathe again. Not far away, a widow quietly opens her door and steps into the dark. She is older, gray at her temples, and she carries no lantern because she knows this street by heart. She walks to the apothecary's shop around the corner, where a man who has known her for 30 years is sitting on his front step with a small cup of something warm. They talk about nothing in particular: the weather, the harvest, whether the priest will add more sermons to the week. But there is a tenderness in the way they speak that has nothing to do with the words themselves. Two people at the far end of life, finding small warmth in each other's company when the night is quiet enough to allow it. And behind the stable, in the narrow alley where the smell of horses meets the cold air, a stable boy and a girl from the nearby laundry house are sitting on a fence rail with their legs swinging. Nearly adults. They talk about their days, who burned their hand, who dropped a load, who said something funny. Their hands brush accidentally, then not accidentally. Neither of them mentions the future. Tonight is enough. The night holds all of this quietly. It shelters them in its darkness. It gives them the only privacy that a world of thin walls and close neighbors ever allows. When the watch makes its next round, the young lovers by the well have already parted. The girl slipping inside, the boy watching her window until he sees the faint glow of her candle within. Then he turns and disappears into the dark, carrying the night with him like something he intends to keep. Part 8. The Wolves at the Gate. The deepest stretch of the night arrives. The tavern has grown quiet. Even the last few drinkers have slowly begun making their way home. The watchmen are tired, their lanterns burning lower. The town feels still in a way that is almost unnatural, like the feeling of a held breath. And then from beyond the walls, a sound. Long, low, rising. A wolf's howl. It rolls across the frozen fields, between the dark trees, and breaks against the town's stone walls like a wave of cold air. Distant, but not distant enough. The watch captain stops mid-step. His men stop with him. The younger watchman wets his lips. "Wolves again," he whispers. The captain says nothing. He stands very still, listening. A second howl answers the first. Closer, then a third, higher pitched, from a slightly different direction, as if several animals are speaking to one another across the open dark. Inside the town, only a few people hear it clearly. Most are asleep. A child wakes for a moment, eyes wide, then is soothed back to sleep by a parent's hand. A servant tightening a window shutter pauses with trembling fingers. An old man stares up at the ceiling of his room and counts the howls. The watchmen move toward the gate, thick, iron-banded, bolted from the inside, but the darkness behind it suddenly feels alive. They can hear the wolves more clearly now, not just howling, footsteps too, quick and light, the sound of animals moving with purpose. Wolves don't usually come this close. Hunger drives them here in the coldest months. The smell of animals, of waste, of warmth and food. All of it drifts beyond the walls and reaches into the forest. Tonight, hunger has followed that smell all the way to the gate. The captain sends one man running for reinforcements. The others draw together near the base of the gate, their lanterns feeling small and inadequate against the vast darkness on the other side. Then from beyond the wood, something scrapes against the gate. Not claws exactly, more like a body pressing against it, testing. Then silence. Then a low, guttural sound. Not a howl this time, a snarl. The younger watchman steps back without meaning to. The animals in the small stable near the gate begin to panic. A goat kicks its stall repeatedly. The chickens flutter and cluck. The wolves respond with a renewed chorus. More men arrive. The captain orders them to make noise, bang their poles against the stone, shout, do anything to appear large and threatening. One man grabs a handful of straw, lights it from a lantern, and flings it into the air near the gate, hoping the smell of smoke will carry through the cracks. It seems to work. The scratching slows, the snarling fades. A long silence falls. And then, a heavy impact against the gate itself, as if one of the animals has thrown its whole body against the wood in frustration. The gate holds, but the sound reverberates through every plank and bolt, and every man on this side of it feels it in his chest. For nearly half an hour, the standoff continues. The watchmen shout and bang their poles. The captain calls out until his voice goes hoarse. In the nearest houses, families lie awake listening, children pressed against their mothers, no one quite willing to admit how frightened they are. Then, finally, the sounds change. Quieter, further away. A last howl, solitary and fading, drifting toward the trees. Gone. The captain lets out a long breath. He orders one man to remain at the gate until morning. He looks at the others, pale, relieved, still listening to the silence to make sure it is real. When they finally walk away, the captain glances back once at the gate. Even from this distance, in the light of his swaying lantern, he can see the fresh scratches in the wood. Low, sharp. The wolves had come closer than anyone was willing to admit. Part 9. The Thief. At the edge of the town's quieter quarter, above an old tanning workshop, there is a loft. It smells of hides and oil. A single narrow window looks out over a rooftop view of the lanes below. This is where the thief lives. Not in the way the stories would have it. He is thin, careful, and perpetually cold. He sleeps on a worn blanket and eats when his work goes well and goes hungry when it doesn't. He has learned the night the way a craftsman learns his trade, through repetition and consequence, by knowing exactly how much noise a footstep makes on wet stone, by understanding which watchmen are alert and which are not, and which hours of the night belong entirely to the shadows. Tonight he waits until the wolves have gone, until the tavern has grown quiet, until the watchmen are tired. Then he moves. He slips out through the small window, lowers himself onto the roof, and begins to cross the town above the level of the streets. Up here, there are no lantern laws. No one looks up. The watchmen carry their lights at chest height, illuminating the ground ahead of them, never the sky above. He crosses 2 rooftops before stopping to look down. Below, the baker's courtyard lies empty in the dark. Earlier that day, he had noticed that the door to the small storeroom had been left slightly off its hinge. The baker had been exhausted, pushing to fill a large feast order. His apprentice overworked. Small things overlooked. The smell of fresh bread had reached the thief as he passed in the afternoon. He lowers himself on a thin rope, landing without sound on the cold cobblestones of the courtyard. He eases the storeroom door open. Inside, the shelves hold what he expected: cooling trays of small sweet rolls, and against the far wall, neatly stacked sacks of flour. He takes one, just one. Small enough to be explained by a rat, or a miscount, or a tired apprentice. He ties it shut and tucks it close to his body. As he prepares to leave, he hears a sound, soft steps, a small shape crossing the far corner of the courtyard. He presses himself against the wall and watches. A child, a boy of about 12, ragged, moving with the exaggerated caution of someone trying very hard not to make noise. He opens a small cloth bag and begins to fill it from the cooling rack. 2 small bread rolls, nothing more. The thief knows this boy. His parents died in the winter. He lives on whatever he can find. The thief does not move. He does not call out, does not chase him, does not try to take back what the boy has taken. He waits until the child slips back out of the courtyard before climbing back up to the rooftops himself. There is enough hunger in this town for everyone. His second stop is a spice merchant's house, a man who has recently raised his prices far beyond what the town's poorer families can afford. The thief considers this the most morally straightforward part of his evening. On the merchant's upper balcony, he finds the key ring left hanging carelessly from a hook. The man came home late and drunk and forgot to bring it inside. The thief uses the key. He moves through the house by the light of a dying hearth fire, soft as smoke, and from a shelf above the table takes 1 small jar of cinnamon. 1 jar. The merchant will blame himself for losing it. No one will investigate. But as he turns to leave, a floorboard speaks beneath his foot. The snoring from the next room stops. The thief moves. He is back on the balcony before the merchant crosses the room, and he pulls himself over the roofline before the man opens the door to find nothing but the wind. He lies flat, spread across the roof tiles. 10 breaths, 20. The merchant goes back inside. He rises and continues. He knows his final stop is the most dangerous. The town's tax collection chest, stored in a shed near the market square, holds confiscated goods, jewelry taken from merchants who failed to pay their fines, the kind of thing that could keep him fed for a month. He reaches it, he lifts the lid, and from across the square, a quiet voice says, "I knew you'd come here." The watch captain stands at the edge of the lamplight. His face is tired. His lantern barely flickers. He looks like a man who has been awake for a very long time and hoped this would be the last thing he had to deal with tonight. The thief says nothing. He runs. Part 10. The Chase. The next several minutes belong entirely to speed and shadow. The thief knows these streets the way most people know their own hands. He doesn't sprint. Sprinting makes noise, and noise draws more than one man. Instead, he slides through the gaps between stalls and around corners he has memorized over years of careful nights. The captain follows. Younger men follow. Their lanterns swing wildly, throwing irregular light against the walls. The thief rounds a corner and presses against the stone, letting the captain's rushed footsteps echo past the intersection. He waits, counts his breaths, then moves. He crosses the lower market, slides beneath a wooden table, and stops. He can hear them. 2 pairs of boots now, maybe 3, moving through the surrounding streets in a careful sweep. The captain is not alone. The wolves earlier tonight drew half the watch inward. Every man who is normally spread thin across the town has been pulled toward the gates in the square. For the first time this evening, the thief feels truly cornered. Unless he goes somewhere no one thinks to look. Near the inner gate, there is a drainage channel, narrow, foul, running along the base of the wall. Most people avoid it even in daylight. At night, it is essentially invisible. He knows it connects to the stable, and the stable connects to the tannery loft. The sound of boots approaches. He gets into the channel. The smell is immediate and violent. Wet stone, rotted straw, the residue of everything that has washed down from the upper streets during the last rainstorm. His clothes are soaked within seconds. His hands sink into cold mud. He keeps moving. Above him, lantern light sweeps across the mouth of the channel. A watchman pauses. The thief clamps a hand over his own mouth. "No tracks," the watchman says. "He can't have vanished." A longer silence. Then the boots move away. The thief pulls himself through the mud until he reaches the wooden grate at the far end. One good push. He emerges behind the stable, dripping and filthy, and spends a moment pressed against the side wall of the stalls, calming a nervous animal that has scented something unfamiliar. Then he climbs the familiar broken section of the back wall, crosses the rooftop, and drops through his window into the loft. He collapses on the floor, shaking, not only from fear now, but from cold. His clothes are soaked. His hands are trembling. His heart is only gradually slowing. Outside, the watch continues searching, fainter now, moving through the lower streets. He stays completely still and waits. After a long time, the sounds disappear. In the silence that follows, he allows himself one thought. The margin tonight was smaller than any other night this month, and the margins are shrinking. Part 11. Fire. The hour grows colder and the town grows quieter, settling into the strange, suspended peace of the very deepest part of the night. Then the watch captain stops walking. He sniffs the air. Smoke. Not the ordinary smoke of hearths and candles. Older, darker. The kind that means something is burning that wasn't meant to burn. He follows it. Down the main street. Toward the lower market. Past the shuttered stalls. And to the butcher's shop, where a thin curl of smoke is seeping from beneath the awning. He presses his palm against the side of the building. Warm. He turns to his men. Get the bucket crew. This time, the alarm is not a bell. It is shouted voices. Watchmen running through the lanes, striking doors with the flat of their hands. People emerge in nightgowns and cloaks, carrying buckets and blankets, with the particular urgency that only fire can create in a wooden town. The butcher doesn't wake until someone takes a beam to his door. He stumbles out into the street, confused and coughing. And when he understands what has happened, he sits down on a step and puts his face in his hands. He had forgotten to fully extinguish the coals in his scrap pile before he left. A single ember, smoldering all evening, had finally found enough dry wood to catch. The fire was caught in time, barely. Buckets of water do their work in great hissing clouds of steam. The watchmen check the beams, the adjoining walls, the building next door. By the time it is confirmed safe, the street is lined with people who couldn't sleep anyway, standing in the cold, feeling relief spread through them like warmth. The captain is less relieved than most. He looks at the smoldering coal pile. The spread of it is wrong, too wide, too scattered, and beneath the smoke there is something else, faintly oily. Someone was here, he thinks to himself. Someone moved these coals. Whether carelessly or deliberately, he cannot say. He thinks of the thief, but the thief doesn't destroy things. The thief takes quietly and leaves quietly. This feels like something else. Someone careless, or someone frightened, or someone who wanted a distraction and went further than they intended. He sets it aside. There are too many open questions tonight to close any of them cleanly. Part 12. The Child. In the confusion following the fire alarm, something small goes almost unnoticed until it is nearly too late. A woman who lived 2 buildings from the butcher's shop had stepped outside to watch, as neighbors do. As the crowd began to thin and people turned to go back inside, she heard something that stopped her. A child crying, thin and muffled, coming from behind a stack of firewood near the edge of the lane. She lowered her lantern and found him, a boy of perhaps 10 or 11, a torn blanket over his shoulders, sitting on the cold ground. His cheeks were streaked with dirt, and his eyes were full of tears he was trying very hard to hold in. She had never seen him before. When she asked his name, he shook his head again and again, and for a while could not form words. She wrapped her cloak around him and began to lift him. Something fell from his hand. A small cloth pouch. It struck the cobblestones with the unmistakable sound of metal inside. She picked it up slowly. It was well made, far too well made for a child to own. The drawstring was neatly tied. It smelled faintly of spice. She stood very still in the dark lane, holding the pouch, looking at the boy. And then she heard the watch captain's lantern approaching. What she felt in that moment was not complicated, but it was important. She thought about the night, everything that had happened, all the fear that had moved through the town since the evening bell. She thought about how quickly frightened people judge. A child found alone after curfew near the site of a suspected fire, holding a pouch of valuables, She thought about how that story would be told before anyone thought to ask a gentler question. She put the pouch behind the firewood, pressed it deep between the stacked logs, covered it with a loose board. Then she lifted the child and carried him toward her door. When the captain appeared, lantern held high, she turned to face him with a calm she had to assemble from scattered pieces. "Is everything all right?" "This boy was crying outside," she said. "He seems lost. I'm taking him in for the night."